All right, so you're ready to explore some esoteric knowledge. Want to go deeper than like a quick Wikipedia search? Today we're diving into Rudolf Steiner's How to Know Higher Worlds. It's a guide to developing inner perception, like almost a training manual for your soul.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Steiner presents a very structured approach,
Yeah.
almost like a series of exercises for developing latent spiritual senses.
Okay, exercises for the soul. I love that. Before we get too mystical here, I want to be clear, we're not talking about robes and chanting, at
Hey.
least not right away. So where does someone even begin on this path?
Well, Steiner really emphasizes the importance of cultivating reverence, and he's not just talking about, being polite. It's about training your mind to actively seek the valuable and essential in everything, even the things that you might initially find unpleasant.
Well, that's interesting. So it's not just about appreciating the good things in life,
Yeah.
but finding the deeper meaning, the essence in everything we encounter.
Exactly. Steiner suggests this practice of reverence actually helps to clear away, like, the static of our everyday perceptions, allowing us to perceive the world more subtly and more deeply.
Yeah, that makes me think of times when I've been stuck focusing on someone's flaws,
Yeah.
and it just creates all this negativity. But when I can shift my perspective and see their strengths, or even just their struggles, it changes the whole dynamic.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example of what Steiner's getting at. It's not about ignoring the negative. It's about cultivating a deeper, more nuanced perception that allows us to see beyond the surface.
So instead of just reacting to things at face value, we're learning to tune into a different frequency, see the world through a new lens.
Precisely. And Steiner outlines this process in 3 stages: preparation, illumination, and initiation.
Okay, those names sound pretty intense, like levels in a spiritual video game.
Yeah, they do have a certain mystique to them, but let's break down what these stages actually involve, starting with preparation.
Okay, let's dive into that. What does preparation look like in practice?
One of the core practices Steiner emphasizes is mindful observation of nature. And it's not just passively looking at a tree, but really contemplating its growth, its decay even. He talks about finding the spiritual color in these processes.
Spiritual color. Now we're getting into aura territory, right?
Not quite literal colors. Think of it more like trying to perceive the essence of something beyond its physical form, like sensing the unique soul signature of a tree or a flower.
Okay, so it's about going beyond just seeing with our eyes, engaging with the world on more intuitive level.
Exactly. It's about developing a new way of seeing, a new way of understanding the world around us.
Okay, so I'm training my perception to go beyond the surface,
Yeah.
to sense the deeper essence of things. But how does that lead to actually seeing in a spiritual sense? Is that where illumination comes in?
Yes. Illumination is about moving from passive observation to active perception. Steiner uses the example of stones and plants, having unique auras. But again, it's not about seeing literal colors, but rather sensing their spiritual essence, their unique energy.
So instead of just looking at a rock, I'm trying to listen to it, to sense its energy on a deeper level.
That's a great way to put it. It's about developing a new kind of sensitivity, a new way of interacting with the world.
This is fascinating. Okay, we've got 2 stages down and 1 to go.
Yeah.
Initiation. What makes it so? Well, initiation.
Well, initiation is where things get really challenging. It's about developing inner faculties like unwavering courage, absolute truthfulness, and iron self-control. This stage is not for the faint of heart.
It definitely sounds like we're leveling up in this stage. And didn't Steiner talk about occult writing in relation to initiation? What is that exactly?
Yes, occult writing is a fascinating concept. It's not about learning a secret code, but rather developing the ability to perceive and understand the language of the spiritual world itself.
So instead of learning to read symbols on a page, we're learning to read the language of the universe. That's incredible.
It is a profound concept, and Steiner believed that by diligently following the path he lays out, these abilities can be developed over time.
Wow, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got lotus flowers blooming, guardians to face, a whole universe of inner exploration ahead of us. We'll dive into all that and more in just a minute. Okay, welcome back. We're exploring Rudolf Steiner's approach to developing higher knowledge, and we've just scratched the surface. Before we left off, we were talking about those 3 stages: preparation, illumination, and initiation. And it sounds like they each kind of build on the last.
That's right. They're not like separate boxes, but rather a gradual unfolding, like a deepening of awareness and perception.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So we've laid the groundwork with preparation. We're starting to see differently with illumination. What happens in this initiation stage?
Well, initiation is where the rubber really meets the road. It's about putting those refined perceptions and insights into action, embodying them in our daily lives.
So it's not just about seeing the world differently, but about living differently.
Exactly. Steiner emphasizes the development of very specific inner qualities: unwavering courage, absolute truthfulness, iron self-control. He suggests these aren't just moral virtues, but actual forces we need to cultivate to progress on the path.
That makes sense. If we're going to navigate these higher worlds, we're going to some serious inner strength and clarity. But how do we actually develop these qualities? They sound like a pretty tall order.
It's definitely a lifelong endeavor, but Steiner provides practical exercises and meditations and ethical guidelines to help us cultivate these inner faculties. He also talks about the development of what he calls lotus flowers.
Okay, lotus flowers. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. I've heard a bit about these from like Eastern traditions, but I'm curious to hear Steiner's take.
Yeah, so Steiner describes these lotus flowers as centers of subtle energy within us. Each one is associated with specific spiritual faculties. And it's important to remember he's not talking about physical flowers, but rather using this imagery to describe a process of inner unfolding.
So it's like these lotus flowers represent different aspects of our spiritual potential.
That's a great way to think about it. And as we progress through the stages, different lotus flowers begin to bloom, symbolizing the awakening of these latent abilities within us.
Wow, that's a beautiful image. Can you give an example of one of these lotus flowers and how it relates to this process of initiation?
Certainly. Let's look at the 16-petaled lotus, which Steiner associates with the region of the forehead. This particular lotus flower is all about mastering our thoughts, speech, and actions.
So it's about bringing that mindful awareness we cultivated in preparation into every aspect of our lives.
Precisely. Steiner describes 8 specific soul processes to cultivate, including things like controlling our thoughts, speaking only what is true and necessary, and aligning our actions with our highest ideals.
That sounds incredibly challenging, but also incredibly powerful. What kind of impact does developing this 16-petaled lotus have on our lives?
Steiner suggests it leads to increased self-mastery, clarity of thought, and even the potential for clairvoyance, the ability to perceive things beyond the physical senses. But he's very clear that these abilities develop gradually, through consistent effort and self-discipline.
So no instant psychic powers, unfortunately. But it does sound like cultivating these qualities can have a profound impact on our daily lives, even if we never reach the level of clairvoyance.
Absolutely. Imagine how different your life would be if you were truly in control of your thoughts, if your words always carried truth and integrity, and your actions were always aligned with your highest aspirations.
Yeah, that would be a game changer for sure. But I have to admit, thinking about mastering all of those aspects of myself feels a bit overwhelming. Where do we even begin?
It starts with small, consistent steps. Steiner provides specific exercises for working with each of these soul processes. For example, one practice involves consciously connecting every thought to the outer world, ensuring that our thinking is grounded in reality, not just lost in daydreams.
So instead of letting my mind just wander aimlessly, I'm actively directing my thoughts, connecting them to something tangible in the world around me.
Exactly. It's about bringing awareness and intention to our thinking, rather than just being swept along by the current of our thoughts.
That's a really practical way to start cultivating more mindful thinking. And I imagine that as we become more mindful of our thoughts, it naturally starts to influence our speech and actions as well.
That's the idea. It's a holistic process of self-development, where each aspect reinforces the others.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how these different pieces fit together. The stages of preparation, illumination, and initiation, the cultivation of inner qualities, the blooming of these lotus flowers. It's all about deepening our awareness, refining our perception, and embodying those insights in our daily lives.
That's a wonderful summary. And this brings us to another fascinating concept Steiner introduces, the guardian of the threshold.
Yeah, this is what I've been waiting for, the guardian of the threshold. It sounds both intriguing and a little intimidating. What exactly are we talking about here?
Steiner describes 2 guardians, actually. The first, often called the lesser guardian, is a symbolic encounter with our own past, our karma.
So it's like facing the consequences of our past actions, but on a spiritual level.
You could think of it that way. It's not a literal being, but rather a symbolic representation of all the unresolved issues, the shadows we've accumulated throughout our lives.
Okay, so it's not like some scary monster we have to fight, but rather a confrontation with our own inner demons, so to speak.
Exactly. It's about facing those aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
We may have tried to suppress or ignore those parts of ourselves that are holding us back from fully realizing our potential.
That sounds intense. And what about the second guardian, the great guardian? What's that encounter like?
The Great Guardian represents a choice point, a crossroads on the path. It's the point where we're faced with the decision of whether to continue on the path of individual liberation or to dedicate ourselves to the service of humanity.
Wow, that's a big decision. So it's like we reach a certain level of spiritual development and then have to choose between focusing on our own enlightenment or using our newfound knowledge to help others.
That's the essence of it. It's a decision that reflects the core values of this path, not just seeking personal liberation, but recognizing our interconnectedness with all beings and choosing to use our spiritual growth to contribute to the evolution of humanity as a whole.
This is such a profound concept. It's not just about personal growth, but about recognizing our responsibility to the world around us. But I'm curious, what happens after we face this great guardian? Where does the path lead from there?
Well, that's a question we'll have to explore in our next part.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Rudolf Steiner's How to Know Higher Worlds. We've been on quite a journey exploring those stages of inner development, the blooming of the lotus flowers, and even encountering those guardians of the threshold. But I'm left wondering, where does this all lead? What's the ultimate goal of this path?
Well, that's a question that really lies at the heart of Steiner's work. It's not just about personal growth, but about something much larger. Our role in the evolution of consciousness itself.
So we're not just trying to improve ourselves, but to contribute to something bigger, something that extends beyond our individual lives.
Exactly. Steiner believed that as we develop these inner faculties, we become more than just individuals striving for personal enlightenment. We become active participants in the evolution of humanity and the cosmos as a whole.
That's a powerful idea, but how does that actually work? What does it mean to participate in the evolution of consciousness?
Well, think about it this way. As we cultivate reverence, refine our perception, and master our thoughts and actions, we're not just changing ourselves, we're also changing the very fabric of reality around us.
So our individual efforts create a ripple effect, influencing the world in ways we might not even be aware of.
Precisely. Steiner believed that every act of kindness, every moment of clarity, every step we take toward embodying our highest potential contributes to a collective upliftment of consciousness.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought. It gives a whole new meaning to personal growth. It's not just about self-improvement, but about becoming a force for positive change in the world.
And that's where the concept of that great guardian of the threshold becomes so crucial. Remember, this guardian presents us with a choice: personal liberation or service to humanity.
Right, that crossroads we were talking about.
Yeah.
But I'm still a bit unclear what those choices actually entail. What does it look like to choose personal liberation versus service to humanity?
Imagine you've reached a certain level of spiritual development. You've glimpsed the beauty and vastness of the spiritual world. You've tasted that bliss of expanded consciousness. The temptation is to simply merge with that, to transcend the limitations of earthly existence.
Yeah, that sounds pretty tempting, to be honest. Who wouldn't want to escape all the suffering and limitations of this world and just exist in a state of pure bliss?
Right. But Steiner suggests that true fulfillment comes not from escaping the world, but from transforming it. Choosing service to humanity means taking those hard-won insights and abilities and using them to help others, to contribute to the healing and evolution of the world around us.
It's like we're being asked to step into the role of a spiritual bodhisattva, someone who has reached enlightenment, but chooses to remain engaged with the world, to help others.
That's a perfect analogy. It's about recognizing that our spiritual growth isn't just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings.
It's a challenging idea, but also incredibly inspiring. It makes you realize that this path of inner development isn't just about personal transformation, but about participating in a much larger story, the story of humanity's evolution.
Exactly. And that's the message I hope listeners take away from this deep dive. The path Steiner outlines is not for the faint of heart. It requires dedication, discipline, and a willingness to face our own shadows. But the rewards are immeasurable, not just for ourselves, but for the world as a whole.
Well, this has been an incredible journey, exploring the depths of Steiner's How to Know Higher Worlds. We covered a lot of ground, from cultivating reverence to facing those guardians, to understanding the true meaning of spiritual service.
Yeah, and this is really just the beginning. There's so much more to explore in Steiner's work, and I really encourage listeners to continue their own deep dive into these profound teachings.
Absolutely. Whether or not this particular path is for you, I hope our conversation has sparked a sense of wonder and possibility, a recognition that there's more to life than meets the eye. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden depths within us all. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to embody your highest potential.
Did you get any of that?